Hello. Let's see. Hi, David.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
I, for some reason, received three invitations to this meeting, so I RSVP'd to all of them, and I'm here.
Oh, okay. That's weird.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that happened, but it's all good.
Were you, did you like join because you saw, did you get an alert that like I joined or the meeting started or anything like that?
Just now,
Yeah.
before you came on, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Um, but anyway,
Yeah. Weird. Okay, well, we can get started. It may just be you and I, although I thought there was several people registered for today, which is why I'm wondering if the multiple invite thing was the issue. Let me look real
okay.
here.
Maybe they're all in one of the other meetings,
I
or
hope not.
hopefully
I
not.
really hope not. I'm just looking here quick. Takes a minute to load. Yeah, there was four other people. Well, I mean I only have one invite on my end, and I
Okay,
straight from the Zoom event center or whatever they call this thing. So hopefully,
sounds good.
but we can get started. It'll just be you and I then. And
Okay,
um the background noise will stop very soon. So can you
okay, I can't hear it. It's
oh,
fine.
okay, good. All right. All right, let me share my screen. And okay. All right, so this is end user training session number 2. Okay, so I'm going to be going over the assess area in FutureFeed, documenting assessment results in FutureFeed, creating POA&Ms, all that good stuff. Then I'm going to just briefly talk about the SSP area and your system POA&M, deliverables, and then some other things up here in the right corner, right top of the page. So, do you have any, I mean, since it's just you and I, let me confirm that still. I have to switch back. Yep. You can really like, do you have any questions, anything you want to start with?
No, I mean I've been going through this and trying to, turn as many blue bubbles green as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where I jumped the gun is I looked at the SSP section
Oh,
before I had finished some of the other things. And if, correct me if I'm wrong, but on the user side, is the SSP just gathering information from all the other subway stops, or
yeah.
are we going to be inputting information directly into the SSP subway stop? Because that wasn't clear to me.
So the subway or most of all these pages, yeah, it's just pulling from other sections of
Okay.
feed. So this is being built out as you're addressing the other areas, but there is in the system environment, you do have some stuff to do down here as far as using
Okay.
devices and assets in this section. But most of this is just it's being populated elsewhere. So if you hit the edit button, it brings you back to that section in FutureFeed that is capturing that data.
Hmm.
And that's where you would edit the data, update it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just a nice browser representation of your system security plan. for the
Understood.
purpose of reviewing and approving. So I mean, since we're here, we could just talk about this. I mean, it sounds like you got the basic understanding. These are just the different sections of your future feed or of your system POAM. And the purpose of this page is to just lay it out nicely in like a GUI format, in the application. So that way you can navigate it and you can assign different sections of the system security plan to different people for the purpose of reviewing and editing and improving or approving. So, like maybe the system info, organization info, maybe you have someone in program management or at the company HR filling this information out, but you then assign, the system environment pages to the IT department or the IT lead. Um, you would just assign it to whoever knows that information, right? And it will be able
Right.
to review it and update it if need to.
Okay.
So this is different than if I go to this page now, this one's empty and you can assign this to someone else.
Right. Okay. That
Um,
makes sense.
yeah. And then you do have to take a look, I mean, go through the sections, and if there's an issue, find the edit button. If you don't have an edit button like down here, you'll have to do a little work here in formatting, but what else do I want?
Can you go back to that hardware that Windows breakdown that I saw? So
Oh, I think.
where was it? Yeah. So if just as an example, let's
Mhm.
say I have some old legacy Windows devices, but they're not in the boundary of CUI. Can I just ignore that and just say none?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
if they're not in your boundary, then for sure you can.
Yeah. Okay. One of our challenges is we're still scoping and gathering documentation and trying to capture our current as is state, but we're also very eager to close out gaps. And so we keep reminding ourselves, don't worry about the stuff that's out of scope.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's true though. If it's not in
yeah,
scope, you don't have to focus on it.
Well, that's
right.
interesting, actually. Can I just pop in there about the
Oh,
scope on those? Because I'm currently doing the tools bit, and from what I gathered, it's just a list of all the tools that you have, or is it just a list of tools that are in, or you believe are in scope?
either or, either or. I do recommend logging everything in here. I mean, ignoring it in the sense of if I logged, for example, I don't know, this Windows, do I have any assets in here? File server. So if I said that this file server is not in scope, I would come over to compliance, say it's out of scope, come over to overview, define why I say it's out of scope, in here, typing up the out of scope rationale. And then in my evidence, maybe I would upload some evidence that's supporting my out of scope determination, because you do tend to cover or talk about what is out of scope when you meet with your C3PAO. They're going to want to know what you said was out of scope, and if it meets, some of them, they'll even explore that if your out of scope rationale meets the out of scope definition, right? And if you need to see that, you go over here, compliance, out of scope, click on this. So is that asset, logically and physically separated from other CUI assets? Does it store, process, or transmit CUI? Is it providing protection to any CUI information systems? So I personally would log the out of scope assets in FutureFeed, so that way I can document my analysis on why I said it was out of scope and be prepared to answer those type of questions or provide that type of evidence if needed during an assessment. Now, what I meant was like you can ignore them is in this connect field, then you it just wouldn't be connected to any of the requirements, and so it wouldn't show up under any of the requirements listed in here.
Mhm.
But I also know that some people choose to just add what they know is in scope into FutureFeed and decide to use FutureFeed that way, which is fine too. I could see why that would be the route to go, especially if if my company was pretty large and we had a very large enterprise network, but my CY enclave was, a fraction of that size. Then I wouldn't probably take all the time to add that other stuff in, but maybe, I don't know.
I mean, I could see it the other way too. Like my company's very small and I want to spend most of my time remediating things, not doing the paperwork.
Yep.
So if I could limit what I put into my time in FutureFeed and all the clicking and filling out information, if I could just contain it to what's in scope, then I can move through FutureFeed a little faster. But it is good to see all your tools, because where else do you have this awesome, organized, and categorized
Yeah.
list of your resources? It kind of comes in handy.
Yes.
Yeah, and the designer of the application envisioned that it could also be used as like an asset management, IT asset management tool too.
Mhm.
Just
All
on the question of evidence,
Mhm.
is there a certain trick to adding evidence in the tools section for a particular asset?
Uh,
Because all I see is there's a way of linking it, but I mean, if the document that you want's on-prem, or just writing it up manually.
yeah, so let's say I had a screenshot of my Windows configuration settings.
Hmm.
So this workstation, this Lenovo workstation, let's say I had a screenshot of a configuration setting on it. I would house it if I would open up that inventory items folder and house it here under evidence and just add evidence. You know, I could do it here, but why did I take the screenshot if I was let's go back to a control
I
then.
see. Oh, no, it's okay. Please ignore me. I didn't scroll down far enough. There is a position where you can upload a document right at the bottom of the page. So
Yeah, there it
I
is.
shall mute myself and go away embarrassed.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. And actually that's kind of a good segue because in today's training I'm going to cover the assess page, so I'll just start going over that and then stop me along the way, okay?
Mhm.
All right, so assess, obviously it's pretty clear. This is where you're documenting your requirements and the status and creating POA&Ms, assigning responsibility, housing evidence, or at least identifying your evidence and your artifacts. Play around with the filters. You can filter on your responsibilities or status. There's a change objective, status, change history here. All right, and then let's use this control for today's discussion. So all of the requirements have these 6 fields here. We'll go over each one of them. This first one, the requirement area. So this is obviously where you're going to be documenting the status at the objective level. So I think most people are doing this nowadays, but early on in CMMC life, people weren't tracking the status and the implementation at the objective level, which then led to failures and gaps and issues. And so in FutureFeed, we have it set up so you have to track at the objective level, which aligns with in an assessment. If you fail one objective, you will fail that overall control requirement. Now there's 2 controls that there's exceptions to that, but just in general, if you fail one objective, you'll fail the overall control. So we have an area summary notes here. This is where you're gonna, at a high level, describe how this control is being implemented in your environment. And then we also have separate objective statement areas where you would define for that specific objective how it's being implemented. And so let's start with objective A. The means of limiting unsuccessful logon attempts is defined. So here I would say that it's defined in the access control policy. And it kind of highlights the assets in this fake environment we have. And so I would expect to see or have the access control policy linked down below under examine. I should find that access control policy here. And it's not there, so I'm just going to add it quick. Going over here to hit plus, access control policy, and now it's there. So it's just a good rule of thumb as up here, if you're in your summary notes area or in these objective statement notes area, if you mention a document, a process, a procedure, a worksheet, a form, then that piece of evidence or artifact should be found down below under the examine section. Okay. And if you have other stuff there, just ask, should it really be there? Because during an assessment, when you're working through the controls, you want to just show evidence related to that one control you're evaluating and try not to give your assessor a bunch of unnecessary evidence. It's going to lengthen your assessment process and potentially lead to a whole bunch of other side conversations.
So would you say in the objective statement, 'cause
Mhm.
I'm trying to find an efficient way of working through this, and from scratch without any examples, I'm trying to write the control summary. I have no structure to use as a reference to do that. Then for the objective statements, there's a lot of information in those, and
Yeah,
that formatting, the way you did it and what you included, I don't know that that would be intuitive to me to be that detailed.
right.
Um, so, but are you suggesting that in each of the objective statements, we should make reference to the evidence? Like we should specifically say this policy or this procedure, and then add those to the evidence for each objective.
Add those. So I mean, this one is a very detailed. This is above and beyond. You could look
Yeah,
at the means of limiting unsuccessful logon attempts is defined in the access control policy. Like that could be all you have. Um, but yes, or I've seen it where people do this. Hold on. Defined as 5 attempts. They actually
yeah,
define the parameter in here, and that's acceptable as well. If you
okay,
define something here, then you don't have to link there's no other document. I would recommend that you only have the definition in one place, one source of truth, so that way if
right,
things change, you don't have to worry about updating multiple documents. But it's
right.
perfectly acceptable to define things in your system security plan, or it's typical that people also define them in policies or procedures and just point to that document.
Yeah, that was my thinking, was instead of cutting and copying and pasting from the document into here, just refer to the document.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I and I
and
use
be succinct. If they want to read the document, they will.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So let me change it to that. That noise will be gone in 1 second. I'm sorry. Someone's outside the door doing lawn. Or yeah, lawn chores. All right. So now the next one is the defined means of limiting unsuccessful logons is implemented. So here is more of where you're going to find screenshots of configuration settings or config reports, stuff like that. And so my statement here, it would be a little bit more detailed. Maybe not this detailed. This is kind of spruced up with a chat GPT. But it definitely would address each one of my assets if the implementation is different. So you see here in my, let's pretend in my fake assessment scope environment, I have the Windows endpoints, I have a firewall, server on-prem, some syslog, a bunch of stuff, right? So
Yeah.
here I say the defined means of limiting unsuccessful logon attempts is implemented via Entra ID for my Windows endpoints and servers. I go on to say that Entra ID is managed by an external service provider, and they're responsible for configuring and managing Entra ID for the access control policy. See the CRM for detailed implementation responsibilities. So here for my Windows assets, it's being enforced with Entra ID. And then I say for my on-prem firewall, there is a means of limiting unsuccessful login attempts, but it's a local security configuration setting. And my system administrator is responsible for maintaining that, yada, yada, yada. So when you write your implementation narratives, just think about your assessment scope, your compliance boundary, and especially when it comes to these technical controls for the objectives that are like this one, really just like I call them the operational objective or the validation objective. You're going to have to define the implementation for the different IT products in your environment. Now here then I would have screenshots for here for the Windows. I'd want to see, I'd want a screenshot of this Entra ID policy showing that this asset is enrolled in that policy. I'd also want a screenshot of my firewall configuration. So where that evidence, then I would attach that evidence to the tools. So instead of down here in a document under examine, I would go down here to test and find my tool. Here's the firewall. And so in here, in this evidence area is where I would put a screenshot of that configuration setting.
Okay. Similarly, when you're actually building out your tools subway stop information, you could do it there.
Yeah.
This is all the same place. We're just getting there through different links.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the
okay.
same clone from
Okay.
the spot. Yeah. And then as the other gentleman mentioned, if I scroll way down, I could put evidence here as well. The thing with this now is whatever I upload here, it will only ever be found underneath the 318 control, which is fine. But for example, that screenshot of my firewall configuration setting, I could maybe potentially also use that same evidence for my configuration baseline requirements and showing the assessor that my firewall is configured to meet my baseline, which requires me to have a configuration setting related to a limit of logon attempts, yada, yada, yada. So if your piece of evidence can be used to support multiple control requirements, then I would try to house the evidence in the inventory items folder here under the evidence folder, or just connect it this way.
Okay.
Think of an acceptable use policy. Let me see if there's one in here.
And that wouldn't really be under a tool though, right? That would be
No, we're back up under the
broader.
examine
Yeah.
section. Yep. Think of an acceptable use policy. Those type of documents typically speak to many control requirements, right? Like don't share your password, don't take CUI data home, shred CUI data when you're done using it, lock it up at the end of the night. Like all of those statements are supporting multiple control requirements. And so when I want to upload evidence that I am using my acceptable use policy, meaning I'm having employees sign it, then I'm not going to want to upload that, signed acceptable use policy 10, 15 times under each one of the controls, I would just upload it here under the evidence section of my acceptable use policy. And now I can only have to upload it once and I'm good to go.
Policy evidence. Okay.
It just takes some learning. And then once you figure it out, there's multiple ways to do things in FutureFeed. So you'll find the best way that works for you, hopefully. But yeah, so now we kind of jumped around. So back here, all of the controls, they have these 6 sections. So this requirement satisfaction summary, define how it's implemented at both the control requirement level and the objective level. And then you're identifying the status. Okay, so you may have already realized this, but when I mark something not met, FutureFeed is going to create that first POA&M entry for me as, let me go back. So now there's a plus here, not met. I now have 1 POA&M item, and you may have noticed that my score decreased. So if I open next, after you mark something not met, FutureFeed will create the first POA&M for you, and then you should make it a point to open it up, get it assigned to the right person, identify impact, effort, and cost if you want to. Definitely set a due date. It will come pre-populated though with a due date. And make it a point to update this POA&M description. So as you saw, your POA&M is going to be pre-populated with some like templated guidance, but it's just meant for guidance, and you should tailor this to speak to your exact environment. You know, what was the failure and what is what is the implementation or what is the fix for my environment. And then you can make more than 1 POA&M if you want to, if you choose to. I've seen it where, you know, let's, for example, this limit of unsuccessful logon attempts. Well, if I didn't have it implemented on my firewall and I didn't have it implemented on my Windows assets, maybe I want to make 2 separate POA&Ms, and one is for my endpoints, right? And then if I click add, I'll do another one and I'll make this one for my firewall. Of course, it would say more, but now in both, I would describe, hey, on my endpoints, make sure you have them picking up this policy. Down here on my firewall, make sure you implement this configuration setting or set it, enable it, whatever. And now I can assign my firewall POA&M to my firewall administrator, and I can assign my endpoint POA&M to my external service provider who's helping me and is responsible for doing Entra ID stuff. So I just wanted to point out you can do more than 1 POA&M if you choose to, and that's how you do it. So for me, if you do have something set as met, then you should have your statement section filled out, and you should have evidence collected. And then you'll want to also make sure your inheritance teardrop icon, that's what this is for, is filled out if needed. So if you remember, I said that my Windows endpoints are being managed by Entra ID, which is the responsibility of an external service provider I'm paying. And so that would be called inheritance in FutureFeed. So over here, I'm going to click on, is there no inheritance, partial, fully? Well, this one would be partial because the firewall is my responsibility. The other thing is my responsibility. One thing is someone else's responsibility. So overall, the objective is partially inherited. And then click on the little icon up here that pops up, and you'll want to identify where that inheritance is coming from. So I guess I already had it selected, but I would select Active Directory here. And then I want to troubleshoot some things with you. So also in my fake environment here, I say that we have Prevail software, and that Prevail is the configuration of Prevail specific to logon attempts is fully the provider of Prevail's responsibility. And so that's fully inherited from Prevail. And I say, see the Prevail customer responsibility matrix. And so over here in my inheritance icon, I should also have selected Prevail. But I can't. So I want to show you when you see the tool you want to identify as having some inheritance or external responsibility, and you can't click on it, that means down below under the test area where you find your tools, I have properly identified and connected Prevail, but it's missing that inheritance piece within the item itself. So up here, if you see Active Directory has a CRM flag, I need that for my Prevail. So I would open Prevail, and then over here on the left where customer responsibility is, I would set Prevail and close out. Refresh the page. And so now it has that CRM flag, and I should be able to go back up, click on this, and set the flag there. Okay. So if you don't see the tool that you're looking for at all, that means you never linked it down below under test, and you'll have to link it like this. But if you see it and you can't select it, it's missing the CRM flag, and you'll have to set that, and then you can associate it. So now I'm clearly stating in my statement, I have some external service providers that have some responsibility, and then at this inheritance flag, I'm calling out this specific external service provider and tool that has inheritance. Now, if I say something's not met, the process should be marking it not met and then updating the poem that gets created. Any questions on this requirement satisfaction summary area? All right, so below that, then the next 3 sections, we're using the terms, the assessment method terms, okay? Interview, examine, and test. All C3PAO assessors are taught to use these 3 methods when assessing your environment. They're going to interview people at your company. They want to hear from those people responsible for doing the work. They want to hear from them how they do their work and what documents they follow and all that stuff. Then they want to examine, so they're going to look at configuration settings or screen sharing or documents, and then test. Sometimes they like to test out the objective of the requirement, and they can't perform tests for all of them, but they do try to perform tests for a lot of them. For example, a test may be like having you create a fake email, or, a fake account in your environment, and then I try to log in several times until I notice that my account gets locked out, and did that meet the threshold defined in 318. Yeah, so sometimes they test, but it's hard to test for all of the controls. But so under interview section here is where you're identifying with the RACI model everybody involved in 318. And these are going to be people who could potentially be interviewed during your C3PAO assessment, but also these are the people that you're going to interview during your annual internal assessments or continuous monitoring activity. So here you're just clicking, do you want to add an individual or a team or a role? Okay. Examine. Again, I think we covered this. So here's all your documents. If it's missing, then connect it. Now, if it's missing altogether, even if you hit the add category and you don't see it in here, that means you have to go back to the document section of FutureFeed and create that entry, okay? And then the test is where you're going to find all your tools and your technology, because as far as FutureFeed, the only thing we can really lay out as test is they could potentially test your assets to see if they're compliant. And so we called this area test, and this is where we list out all the technology tools that you have identified as either picking up the requirement or helping you implement that requirement. Then the next section, we have this DoD potential assessment considerations. This is just a couple questions that, if you are doing an internal assessment and you get stuck on a control and you're not sure what to ask, that's all this is here for, is just to be helpful. So the first one is there a defined limit of unsuccessful logon attempts, right? And if you say yes, then you're defining that summary notes area and the assessment objectives area. You're defining that implementation narrative. If you hit no, then you're actually going to be creating a system poem entry.
Can you explain again? What is the purpose of this section, and is it mandatory, like,
Yeah.
to get ready for an assessment?
Okay. Yeah, this is not mandatory. This is
Okay.
all just helpful if you want to use it. Now,
Okay.
the purpose is if you're doing an internal assessment
Mhm.
or a gap assessment and you're not sure what to ask or what to look for, it's these questions are um, assessors typically ask these kind of questions for these requirements. So it could help you with trying to do that own internal validation if you're stuck.
But are those kind of repeating what the objective questions are?
I mean, these ones are, I would hope that not all of them, like under 311, um, that it doesn't really talk about authorizing account requests and the requirements. So,
Okay.
and they're not always repetitive, but very
Yeah.
much so, yeah. And then this, of course, we talked about this. This is, you can choose to house anything there that you want to for this one requirement. Okay, up at the top, it will show you the point for this requirement. This is a one pointer. If you want to learn more about the control requirements, you can look at the guidance section here. Just more discussion area, clarification examples, and some external references. You could change up the order of the layout depending on what you're trying to do in FutureFeed. If you maybe just make a plan to go through FutureFeed and only focus on the interview people, only focus on getting the right people assigned as responsible, then you might want to change your order up. And then this copy control thing here, what this is, so what we're doing is right now we're in the 318 control. And so I could send over, you see here how I typed up in the requirements summary area. Here's my summary notes. I also have people tagged in the interview section. So if I wanted to send this information over to another control, then I'm sending the 318 summary notes, interview, examine, that's all your document connections. Test is all your tool connections. So I could copy this data to another control. So if I wanted to, this is a very technical control. Well, so is session lock. Session lock is a very technical control. So I would expect the implementation of a technical requirement may be the same. It might be Entra ID. I'm going to have the same system administrators doing that type of work, right? So over here, I might want to copy that data over. And by the way, I'm into the recommendations. So the first tab is recommendations. Let's not go with those, although we have made some smart recommendations. And now I could choose for session lock, I want to send over everything, or maybe I just want to send over the interview pieces. And then it's going to say, copy the data. Do you want to overwrite what data is there, or do you want to append, merge that data? Okay. So now, actually, I should have done this better. Hold on. Let me actually send over so you can see, because I'm pretty sure I just sent over. So I'll send over all the data there to session lock. Merge it. And then session unlock. I was trying to figure out what number is. So here, see, it says copied from 318. Because I put merge. There was already, I guess, some data in there. This was already in there, and then 318. So that's all that copy control is. If you want to send that data elsewhere, because you kind of know the implementation is the same, maybe Active Directory is doing it for this control and this control and this control. The people responsible for implementing those requirements are the same, and that's why you'd send that data over. So that's the assess page. I mean, that's it. You would do that activity for all 110 requirements, all 320 objectives. Any questions about the assess page?
Nope.
No, that's good.
Okay. And then we started talking about the system security plan at the beginning of the meeting. So I'll just breeze through it one more time because someone joined. But so this SSP area, it's just a browser representation of your system security plan. If you go over into the deliverables and you export a system security plan report, the sections of that report and the data that's displayed in that report is going to be the same as what you see here in this system security plan section. So it's just meant for like when you have to do a system security plan review, you would want to do your review and editing of your system security plan in here in FutureFeed to make things move a lot more quickly. And whenever you want to do an official approval cycle of your system security plan, you can also do that in here. So, for example, if this data here, my system unique identifier, if this was inaccurate, I could just hit edit. It's going to bring me back to that section in FutureFeed, and I can then change that information. That's funny that it's doing that. It's acting funny, I don't know. So if I go back to the SSP now, my information has been changed. Okay. You can assign different sections, and this is true for everything in FutureFeed. This compliance review box here, it's present over in this tools area. Okay, so what I'm about to say, you can use it everywhere in FutureFeed that has this compliance review box. But in your system security plan, maybe you want to choose to use this to assign different sections of the system security plan to the right people so they can review and improve it. So maybe you assign the system environment sections to your IT administrator because they're the one who knows the most about that, right? And then they can mark things reviewed and approved and get them, at least provide their initials in here, okay? We also have this reviewed, not reviewed flag here, which will capture history. Okay. And then if anything's wrong, just hit the edit back button and it will bring you to that section. And then in here under the system environment, it's going to tell you what's missing, what you got to work on. It will walk you through the devices down here and all that stuff. Now, next is your FutureFeed POA&Ms. So we call that just your FutureFeed. It's your FutureFeed plan of action area. And so here, all throughout FutureFeed, when you were making POA&M entries for objective non-compliance, or maybe you had documents that are still in draft form, tools that you're going to acquire, all that stuff, it's going to show right here. Right now, I have 34 POA&M items in this system, which has only 2% assessment. So this is fake, but you know, you can see a lot of POAMs sometimes, hundreds of POAMs sometimes. It depends at what stage you are with working it on these requirements. But what we've done then is implement this project builder so you can, instead of having to work on 34 different items, maybe I'll group them together and then I just have to track 3 or 4 different projects, right? So maybe I would go down here, okay, I need a hardware and software listing. I also need a network diagram and a data flow diagram. These are all really technical. So maybe I'm going to give these to one person, my system admin, and he's going to get me my hardware software inventory listings and my network diagram. So I'll group them, go up here to add to projects. I'm going to give it to the IT department. And now over under project portfolio is where I could see all my projects. I can go to the one here. Of course, you would fill all this other data that gets captured, all this metadata here. Description of the project, start, due date, responsibility, status. There's some if there's price involved with remediation, budgeting information, area for you to upload additional documents. And then down here are the individual items that are part of this one project. So now instead of having to manage, you know, tens of, you know, potentially up 100 or more POAM items, I just have to focus on 1 or 2 random POAM items that didn't fit into a project and a handful of projects to follow up on.
So those poem tasks, yeah, or poem items, whatever you want to call them, people don't need to be able to get into FutureFeed to be able to update them. I can update it on behalf of them. You know, like you say, for your compliance review with the drop downs, can I do it on behalf of other people to say reviewed and whatever? Because I'm never going to get all the people I need to provide input into
Yeah.
FutureFeed. It's just not going to happen. You know, we're a medium-sized company and people are doing other things basically. And this is not priority.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
until it becomes a priority, of course.
Right.
But yeah, so, you know, I'm going to have to do a lot of hand holding and a lot of guidance and just actually filling in a lot of this stuff myself. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's unfortunate, but I've seen that happen, you know, especially with the cyber requirements. And yes, you can go in here and update POAM items yourself. It doesn't have to be the person it's assigned to. It's pretty common in larger companies, at least, that there's someone who's supposed to manage the POAM, and it's usually someone other than the people who have to do the work.
uh,
But yeah, you can definitely update anything in FutureFeed. Shoot, you said something and I wanted to add to it. Oh, so tasks related to POAM items.
mhm.
I have suggested an update to FutureFeed. I would like it so that way, let's say you go into a POAM item here, this one POAM item, you could capture some status updates very clearly in here. So we're looking to hopefully improve that. But for now, as far as status updates, you would track them, you know, in the POAM description area. And then if you had to create any tasks to get activity moving, let's do like, I guess we can do this network diagram one. So let's say I wanted to create a task to get someone, you know, engaged here. I would click on the item and then I would go up into tasks here and create a task, you know, Adam, develop, what is this, network diagram? You know, this is where you're going to create your tasks in the documents. And then for any requirements that are specific to an assessment objective, when I click on this one, it's just going to open for me the assessment objective. So really, you'll have to go to the 313 control and figure out where best to put a task on what needs to be, why is there a poem and what needs to be started. I don't know what the failure was, but okay.
Yeah, I think somewhere I noted that you can link it into help desk as well.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, so that's down here. I have to zoom out 90%. So off to the right here, this little envelope, I could send an email to my ticketing system and even do some status notes here as well. Yeah.
Right. So that could take care of all the hounding of people and following up and stuff to a
Yeah.
certain extent. All right.
Yep. All right, and then the last area is the deliverables. Okay, so we have 7 minutes left. I'll just make it quick. Exports, you can export all the data files and the data that you've put into FutureFeed here. I would expect that you would use this functionality at least once when you engage a C3PAO. They want you to give them all of their evidence up front. You know, they're going to want your SSP and all your diagrams and policies and procedures. And so you might just export it here and then pass it over. The SSP, this is where you're going to export a Word version of your system security plan. After you download or export it, then you would want to find it in the history area. If you're interested in marking it as approved, find it in the history area, click on the pencil icon, and here is where you can track if that SSP version that you generated in FutureFeed was approved and by who. You can run a little SSP report for the purpose of submitting your NIST score in the SPRS system. So here's all the information you would need over here to submit in SPRS. And then when you snapshot now, you're going to create a little snapshot of your system security plan that is retained and it aligns with the score you submit here. POAM, you can export your POAM in Word here, POAM actions and POAM projects. If you do want to export into Excel, then you're going to want to do that in your POAM area. Over here, you can export to CSV or Excel. But under the deliverables area, they only have it for Word at this point in time. And then the last thing is this presentation. So if you're in a compliance management role, I'm assuming at some point in time, you're going to have to do a presentation or a report on status. That's what this is doing for you, making a extremely easy process to run some reports. Now it's taking data from FutureFeed, so it's only going to be as accurate as the data in FutureFeed. But like, for example, let's say I want to maybe meet with my CEO and give them a status update on progress, overall compliance progress, and POAM metrics. And so in setup, I would just, put my name, I'm the presenter, why are we meeting? I define an executive summary. And then in here, I'm picking what I want to see. So let's do the welcome. I want to see the assessments. Just the score though, and requirement summary page. Maybe I want to see, I don't want to see the SSP. I do want to see POAM metrics, so I'm going to leave that visible. So that's all you're doing is you're going through and making different like pages and data visible. And now if I go up here, and I could change the theme, dogs, technology, all right, and then hit play. If you hit play, it looks more like a PowerPoint presentation, which is nice. But if you download it, then it feels more like a report, and it's a nice report too. So here, my presentation, here's my assessment details, score, and you can scroll down. There'd be more down there if there was more. Let's see, compliance metrics, so I can get an idea of not met, all that data. And then POAM anatomy here. Here's my POAM. Here's some POAM metrics. Okay. Exit.
Yeah. Did you say that's an extra subscription? Because I can't find it on my dashboard.
No, it's part of the cost. You should have it. So go up in deliverables, and it's the presentation, cyber readiness presentation.
Okay, so dashboards, deliverables, right?
Yeah.
Right, say it again then. Just walk through us again because I can't seem to be able to find it.
Yeah. So up on the top menu,
Yeah.
deliverables.
Oh yes, okay, right, got it. Yeah, presentation setup. Oh, smashing.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yep. And they are working on, just so you know, we'll make an announcement, but they are working on improving the reports and getting a new document editor and stuff like that. But pretty solid right now, at least.
Yeah.
All right. Do you guys have? We just have a couple minutes left. So do you have any questions?
I have a question, just sort of a bigger picture question.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know the answer, but we're a pretty small company. We don't have any fat on the bone for any one department, let alone management. Don't have a compliance department. Um, do you find that companies, just like small companies that don't have that? I mean, this seems like and I've already been using it for a month or two, but
Yeah.
you know, that seems like there's just this huge amount of data entry and linking and other things, and it seems to me that no matter what size company you are, there's a lot of work to go into this. And I wonder if people that just don't have the time, do they just punt it to hire a compliance person, and that person just drags them through the whole process so that they
Hmm.
can still keep their business running. But when the compliance person says, "Hey, I need all this evidence," they just feed it to them, and they do this because it just seems like, you know, I was trying to describe to my daughter the other day. I'm like, there's 14 control families, there's 110 controls, there's 320 objectives. But even within 320 objectives, if you look at the summary, the statement, the evidence, the tools, this thing just blows up into a huge amount of data management. And
Yeah.
I just can't see how I have time to do this. And I don't have a compliance officer. And you know, it's a lot of work. It's so much
I
work.
agree
It
with you,
really,
David.
really is.
Like, I'm
Well,
literally going to go talk to my boss and say, you need to hire someone. I don't have the bandwidth to. I mean, I've did people, tools, documents, but getting to the assessment is a huge step up from
Mhm.
just putting the foundation together.
Right. Right.
I feel like they, you know, maybe getting testimonials from people who've done this, that you know, sort of like, hey, here's my strategy for how I attacked this project. You know, I realize it may be different for everybody,
Mhm.
but you know, maybe there's some way for, you know, people who've been through it to go, I would do it, you know, try doing it this way. Or because I know you've said like there's a lot of ways to jump around and do things and enter information, which I like the flexibility. I just almost feel overwhelmed by the flexibility.
Yeah.
yeah. So what we've done is we did hire an assessor, um, and we went through and he told us what information we needed to collect. We've done this a couple of times with them. The problem is every time you get somebody different, especially while this was all maturing, is you get kind of a slightly different view or even a significantly different view of what you need, where you need to put it, because nobody that you really know or intimate with has ever done it. You know, so we're kind of
Right.
leading edge on a lot of this. So one of the tacks that I taught, and I'm the IT manager, I'm not compliant neither. One of the tacks that we took was I said, look, I have no issue with audits. Yeah, let's get an audit and find out where we are. So we contacted a few companies, and most of them do like a pre-audit, you know, like a mock audit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you go through the mock audit, yeah, You find out where your gaps are and everything, and it's actually the audit. So it's like that auditor coming in. Then you can use the same audit company to do your actual audit. Yeah. And then you get, you have to, any gaps that you have a couple of weeks, and then I think the DoD just allows you to take those gaps and just redo the ones that you failed on, and then have a POAM for 180 days after that. So it seems overwhelming, but I found it's less overwhelming if you, as I started to break it down like that. And,
yeah,
possible.
my understanding is that when you go into an assessment, a third-party assessment, the real thing, if you fail, you don't come back and just address the things you failed on. You have to start over and do a whole assessment again. Is that not true?
No, it's not true. No.
You can answer, Simon. Go ahead.
Yeah, I say from what I know, no, it's not true. And we've talked to a lot of assessors. Rachel, you probably know more about it than I do, but where we are right now is we are just about to sign up for the mock assessment. Yeah. And then whatever time we need after that to close some gaps, we'll go through for the actual assessment. They give us a few weeks in between, and then we only have to rectify the ones that we failed on. After that, yeah, you can say, you know what, I'm just going to put those on a POAM. And the POAMs are pretty good, well, they're pretty good, but the requirements are better than what they used to be. It's just things that you can't have on a POAM are things like, mandatory things you get on level 1, like you've got to have access policy, you've got to have badged entry and things like that. The rest of it you can put on a POAM, and you've got 180 days to get it fixed.
Well, for level 2, though, I think there's a bunch that are not POAMable, right?
Yeah.
Like,
that's what I'm showing. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So for a level 2 specifically, you have to pass 80% or more of the controls. So 88 out of 110. So you can have that many fail. But you also cannot have so it's at a 0.8 equal to 0.8. So 80%. So how many is that then you can fail? 22?
So for level 2, you can pass with an 80% score. I did not know that. I thought it was you had to hit 100%.
Caveats, none of the requirements that failed can be a value greater than 1. So if I go back to FutureFeed, to the assess, the score, the point system is at the top. So this is a 1-pointer. So you could fail this one. But you can't fail any of the 3-pointers or the 5-pointers. Here's a 5-pointer. You can't fail that one. So what we did is we added this not POAMable flag. It will show up when you start messing with the statuses, but that means don't fail that one. It's not able to go on an assessment POAM. But then also it says, there's some exceptions about partial credit here for CUI encryption and FIPS. And then you can't fail any of these ones down here. So take a look at, I'll copy it.
Real quick, I want to ask another question, but then I got to jump off, although I would love to keep talking. This is really useful emotionally for me. So so we've engaged with a consultant for sort of some basic scoping and gap analysis, and they also offer mock assessment. And what we're trying to do is bite this off in small chunks, because consultants are not cheap. Assessments are not cheap by any means. Small companies don't want to spend $100,000 just for their first year of CMMC compliance, let alone ongoing compliance. But if I did a mock assessment and we went through the ringer with them, and they came out with, okay, here are all your POAMs, are their POAMs going to be detailed enough that we're basically coming out of it with a shopping list and we just have to, no?
I
Because,
don't think so. I haven't seen that great of, but I haven't seen every mock
yeah,
assessment report out there. Simon, maybe you can provide input on yours, but I have worked for consulting companies and I've seen some reports that people have gotten, and they weren't much detail. It will tell you where you failed, which ones you failed,
yeah,
give you some guidance on what to do, but I haven't seen a very specific to your company, specific to the systems you're using and applications you're using. Here's exactly what you got to do. Because they usually
yeah.
charge for that. Then they're going to say, here's all you failed, pay me and I'll help you fix them.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a service tier that's remediation, right? So
Right.
there's scope and gap analysis, then they'll do a remediation, then you can do a mock assessment, and then you can go get your third party audit.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm kind of, as I go through FutureFeed, I'm realizing I've got to sell my boss on the remediation piece because we just don't have the bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
Like we need someone to lead us by the nose, and we will provide what is needed, but just the project management effort of this is, I think, underestimated for small
Mm-hmm.
companies. And I'm starting to get at that, like, oh my God, this is now my new job. And I didn't,
Yep.
I'm not ready to take this on by myself. Because with small companies, getting HR